My name is Paul Michaud, and I'm the CEO of Proceve. Today, we're going to talk about artifacts which form the backbone of everything we do inside Proceve software. So, what's an artifact? In the context of Proceve software, everything is an artifact, whether it's a requirement or a task, a test, an issue. They're all types of artifacts in the context of Proceve software. But we have a lot more artifact types. Under requirements, we have two special types of artifact: feature requests and roadmap items that we have. For tasks, we have projects and to-do items. So projects, which we've talked about before, are actually tasks. They're just really, really big ones. We've also talked about tracking projects, which are a special type of project. In addition, we have other artifact types like documents, milestones, objectives, and results. All of these share certain properties that we'll look at next. So imagine I have an artifact, whatever type of artifact it is, whether it's a requirement, a task, a test, an issue. All of them have certain properties associated with them. One, they can actually have parent-child relationships. So I can have a requirement or an artifact. It has a sub-artifact, which then have sub-artifacts, which have sub-artifacts. So unlike other software where you can have a single task and it might allow you to go one level deep on a subtask, but that subtask isn't really a task record in its own right, we treat, no matter how many levels deep you want to go, every one of the tasks, the subtasks, etc., have all the same properties, behavior, management capabilities, organizational capabilities of that original task. There's no limit to how many subtasks you can have or sub-artifacts, and there's no limit to how deep you can go up to the limits of our servers. So you can actually do quite a lot to organize your various artifacts much better by leveraging this structure as well as the other organizational attributes that we've built into it. So, what are the common properties of an artifact? Whether it's a requirement, a task, a test, an issue, a document, a milestone, all of them, all the different artifact types inherit certain things. So, first off, there's a bunch of details about the artifacts. The basic ones are every artifact has a name, it has a short summary, and it has a long description. That long description can be a complete novel if you want it to be. I don't recommend it, but it can be. In the case of a document, then that description becomes quite large. We also have details related to the stage that it's at and the status. So whereas a lot of other software either conflate or treat stage and status the same, we don't. We make a distinction between them because we think that's important. The stage you're at does not necessarily imply the status. And in fact, under status, we recognize 4 different types of status attributes that can be updated throughout the software. And we'll get into those in more detail in another video. So there's a bunch of details related to planning. What sprint did you assign it to? Does it have a deadline? And so on. And all of this comes under the planning section. We have an extensive capability set under estimation for every artifact. Whether you're estimating the effort on a requirement, a document, a task, whatever it is, you can apply estimates as well as resource allocation, costing, you name it, to every single artifact type. You can schedule things. Again, like we talked about, the scheduling is more than just scheduling. It actually tracks scheduling, but it also allows you to keep track of actuals. So not just the scheduled date that we're going to get things done or the scheduled duration, but we actually allow it to track and compare against the actuals. We have extensive capability to handle dependencies. And in theory, a dependency can even be between a task and a requirement or a test and a task. not just within one task to another task, for example. So we keep track of the dependencies, all different dependency types, and you can actually display them in Gantt diagrams and things like that. And all of that is available on every single artifact type. We also have an extensive set of capabilities on every artifact to organize them. So we've looked already at organizing using the hierarchies, but you also have the ability to add tags on it, sort of your typical hashtags. We have special grouping tags that you can do, and you can also do directed tags for people as well. But there is a range of organizational features. You can categorize things, and even the categories themselves are hierarchical in nature. So you can say this is not only a software category of task, but it's a UI task, and it's specifically a mobile UI task versus a web UI task within the hierarchy. And all of those can be applied to any artifact. And finally, we have the tracking capability, which allows you for any artifact to associate it with one of the tracking projects that you've defined. So you can literally say, I want this item to be associated with tracking projects A, B, and C. It's not limited to a single tracking project, but you can choose as needed for your organization to track it in multiple projects simultaneously, and we keep track of all of that. And that's available again on every single artifact in the system. In addition, every artifact allows you to have a fully sort of threaded conversation like you would in a product like Teams or Slack, etc. So we have, instead of just comments on an artifact, it's actually a complete conversation that's fully integrated with the broader collaboration mechanism within the system. This provides unique capabilities where we can actually then aggregate all of the conversations, for example, related to an entire set of artifacts within a sub area of a project, and we can technically merge them into a single conversation and thread that managers can monitor everything going on, say, within a work stream. And it allows us some capabilities like that. In addition, we can handle attachments on any of the documents, any artifact, whether it's on a task, it doesn't matter what it is, we can assign attachments to it. We actually have extensive time tracking. So the system allows for both manual and automatic time tracking against any artifact. So we can track the time it took to write a requirement or write a document, as well as to perform a task or a test, etc. And all of this is tracked not just as an aggregate number, but every entry we know who entered it, who it was entered for, when it was entered, how long they worked on something, and every single entry is seen separately, but also can be aggregated up. It can be displayed into timesheets, and all of that capability for time tracking is available. In addition, we have a complete version history on every single artifact. So we track every time there is a change and something is updated and saved, we actually save a complete record and we archive the old one off, and we increment the version number on every single record. And we've also built in the ability to define data retention policies for each account. We set a default, but with the appropriate product tier in the future, companies will be able to define their own data retention policy, and then we'll handle that and remove any historical versions of records according to the rules. Finally, we have extensive traceability on every artifact. So we know what its relationship is to every other artifact within the system, and we provide mechanisms to keep track of that. And we're constantly working to figure out better ways from a user experience perspective to allow you to define those relationships in the easiest possible way. Because frankly, if I go into a lot of other systems, keeping track of that traceability data, if and where they even allow it at all, most of the systems don't have any concept of traceability. And even where they have traceability, it's nothing more than a label. You can't do anything with it, where we're actually allowing us to capture, quite complex relationships, not just within a particular artifact type, but across artifact types. We can track a requirement to a particular conversation or whatever if somebody chooses to define that. So the system allows for that. And as I said, we're constantly working to improve the ways that we can either automatically populate those traceability items so that you don't have to do it manually, or we're working in the user experience to make it so that you can create, for example, when you go and say, I've got a requirement and I want to create a task to implement the requirement, right click the mouse, say create linked task. We automatically create the task, and we create the traceability record that says this task implements this requirement, or the same with the test. This test implements this requirement with a single mouse click, and we'll automatically create those in the UI.